What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
You know, I am the glue that holds the EOW together, obviously, because
Obviously, yes.
this is our second show with only two of us in a row. So
Yeah.
it's
Hey,
like
that's what it's going to be.
I'd like to just have guests on my show. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Sanjay Nath and Michael Kerr are sometimes here. And Sanjay more sometimes than Michael, but they are both with audiences today. And so you have Jeff and me, and we're gonna talk about something that I think we can have a lot of interesting learning from. Okay.
Yep. I assume we don't have music this morning.
We do. Oh, don't assume that. We do have music.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get started.
All right. So here's what I'm going to do that's going to make it sound better. I think I'm going to share my screen just briefly, and but let's get going with the music. Here we go.
What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
You know,
Richard, come across. Everybody hear it? Could everybody hear it?
Yes, for sure. And you know, when you were gone, Sanjay and I actually sang the song as we went. So,
yeah. Listen, I watch every recording. So
That's
good.
pathetic.
So, again, welcome everybody. Just by way of introduction, my name is Richard Haddon. I'm an author and speaker. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I've written several books that have the phrase "contented cows" in the title. Contented cows give better milk. And I am today in Louisiana, Missouri, working with a hospital client here in this town. And let me turn it over to my friend and colleague, Jeff.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Tobe, and I too am a speaker, an author, a trainer. Obviously, I don't work for a living because I'm right here in my home office in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but always excited to join you, Richard.
Great. And I'm glad that Jeremy saw when I shared the screen that I do have some laugh tracks on my in my set of music files that I sometimes will use in order to enhance what the group is laughing at. Exactly. All right. Well, so today here's the title of today's session, and that is Leadership Lessons from Elon Musk.
You know, I was adverse to even joining you with that title. So I think the country is kind of angry right now, you know, with Elon Musk and his antics, if you will. But I read this amazing article online, and it was called "What Elon Musk is Proving About Leading People." Oh my gosh, it was written by Richard Haddon.
Imagine that. Yeah. Well, it's true. And it's on the Contented Cows website, the blog contentedcows.com. And, you know, here's the thing. Let's be really clear about what we're going to talk about today and what we're not going to talk about. Sometimes, I mean, Elon Musk can be a very divisive character, and he is also seen somehow in the realm of politics. We're not going to discuss his politics because that's just not how we roll here at Every Other Wednesday. But I think we are going to talk about some of the things that we can learn from how he's conducted himself since he acquired Twitter about a month or so ago. So, Jeff, what I mean when we think about Elon Musk? Obviously he has a big target on his back, and he's an easy target, and I want to acknowledge that from the very beginning. But I thought what we would do in this discussion is let's just go beyond the obvious. Obviously, there are a lot of people who would say that Elon Musk, you know, is not exactly the quintessential great leader, and yet we have to hand it to him. His companies that he has been in charge of so far, SpaceX and Tesla, have really been on the vanguard of a lot of technology, and they've done some amazing things. I think a lot of it through the mission that people see what they've done. He has been able to, in spite of his leadership style, I think create some great value for customers in those two companies. Now, and then this curious thing where he took over Twitter, which doesn't really seem to be in his wheelhouse, although arguably you could say that it's a technology company. And so again, I want to go beyond the obvious of, you don't treat people, you don't be a jerk, you know, and that's pretty obvious. I don't think there's anybody, certainly in our audience, certainly people who are aficionados of talking about organizational culture, who would think that the decisions that Elon Musk has made over the last month or 6 weeks or so are anything that would be indicative of what we kind of believe in. But beyond that, I think there's some specific things that have happened that we can look at, that we can all use as lessons, because none of us are immune from making poor decisions, and I think we can use a lot of feedback from our employees. So let's kind of talk about
before we go there,
about what
I got a word in edgewise here. So.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
No. Well, first of all, Ron, it's a great resource, a jerk-free workplace. Great book.
And we know who wrote that, our own Michael Kerr. Yeah,
exactly. But even just looking at recent history, this mentality has, although on one end there's success, on the other end there's how do I handle people? Yeah. Great example, Steve Jobs. Another guy who obviously was incredibly successful at what he did. He was brilliant, just wasn't a people person. And I don't know anything about Elon Musk's personal life, but from what I understand about Steve Jobs, he wasn't exactly the ideal personal friend, spouse, father, whatever. Mm-hmm. But all that said, I think and you said it well, I think that it's the end result. I'm hoping that at somewhere Twitter has an end result that we look back at and say, yes, but right now it just seems like a fiasco. So yes, let's look closely at maybe some of the lessons that we can take away that were great in your article.
Yeah, thank you. And we really are going to rely on a lot of input from you, from our audience today. We want to hear what you think, some questions that you may have, and we're not looking necessarily for you to agree with what we say. We really would like to expand the discussion and help us think about this in a variety of different ways. So just as a quick recap, I know not everybody has been following, just like maybe you are the World Cup or something else, following exactly what has happened at Twitter. But I think in a nutshell, we could say, Elon Musk took over the company back in November, and he immediately discarded about half of the employees. He just decided we don't need all these people working. To be fair, they probably were a little bloated. Don't you think, Jeff?
Yeah.
I mean, they probably had more people than they needed, and a lot of people not necessarily working on things that were bringing value to the company. So he decided to come in and just whack about half of the heads that were in there. We've also talked in this broadcast about how to handle things like that, whether it's individual terminations or mass layoffs. And I think the way that he handled that clearly is not a way that would build a positive culture. But then after he did that, he came out with this ultimatum where he said everybody's going to have to work what he called hardcore, which meant a lot of hours.
12-hour days.
12-hour days, and completely sold out and really committed heart and soul to the organization, and even to the fact where he told everyone, you're going to have to come back into the office. There's going to be no more of this work from home nonsense. He thinks COVID is over, and so we'll just all come back into the office. What I find ironic, Jeff, is that he is the one person on earth with the most real-time access to immediate social and workplace trends. I mean, if anybody has access to what's going on up to the second, it's Elon Musk. Somehow he has missed the whole idea that right now, and I'm not saying it's going to always be this way, but right now, employees are clearly in the driver's seat when it comes to the labor supply demand lack of equilibrium.
Yeah, he has all the information at his fingertips in the world. Oh, yeah. And outside the world, too.
Yeah.
I think that you bring up a great point. That is that it brings to mind, when I read your article, I was thinking, I don't know why I made this correlation of the real estate market, right? Which who's in the driver's seat at any given time? Is it the seller or the buyer? Right now, the employees definitely are in the driving seat. And do you need to go, Richard? I can. I'm kidding. They're definitely in the driver's seat, as you say. There's a labor demand, a labor supply demand thing going on, and it doesn't. He has a unique. Here's the thing, and you brought this up in your article, and I loved it. It's his business. right? Now it happens to be on a very public platform.
Right.
So that's what makes it different. But if you or I bought a business, we, thank God for capitalism, we have the right to run it any way we want to run it.
Exactly.
As does he. But, and I think there's a big but here. And you can fill in the blank.
Well, but if you're going to run your own business and make those decisions, you have to be prepared for the consequences of those decisions. So yeah, we can make those decisions. You do anything you want to with your own business, but you have to be prepared for how people will respond. And I think if we look at what happened immediately, because so he laid off half of his people, he put out this big edict, this ultimatum, and then what happened? About half of the people or no, more than half of the people who were left decided, I'm going to check out of this establishment voluntarily. And now he's left with roughly 20 to 25% of his original workforce. And what they're finding now is they literally do not have the human power to do the work that needs to be done.
Frederick brings up a great point, and so does Rhonda, if I may. He says Musk is the quintessential spiky leader. I like that word. I've never heard that term.
Yeah.
Innovation often requires Whoops, I lost him. Everybody's talking now. Often requires spikiness, but is not as effective as a leader style for established organizations. So Rhonda, that leads into your question. Has he managed not using lead on purpose? Tesla and SpaceX similarly. And the answer is we don't know. And because he started those organizations, so he's molded it. This is the first time I'm hearing of him buying an existing huge organization and trying to mold it into what he wants. And who knows, he's not here to defend himself. Maybe he wants 25%. He wants to narrow it down so he can rebuild, what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
Carol says, which is why business people who run for political office seem to think they can run the government, local and federal, as if they were king. Okay, we said no politics, Carol. So, but that's how Steve Jobs, who else runs a business.
Mm-hmm.
It is as if they are king, and they have every right to it if it's their business.
Yeah. Well, and I've said for a long time, and again, a lot of the work that I do has always been around the workplace and culture and employee engagement. Over the last year or so, I've been kept really busy trying to help people with issues of recruiting and retention, because even though the economy continues to change and evolve, that is still seems to be one of the number one issues. Is we can't find enough people, and when we get them, we can't keep them. So what do we got to change about what we're doing so that we don't have this constant turnover, and so that we literally have enough people to fuel our business? And I've always said, if you can find enough people to work under your rules, go for it. I mean, absolutely, go for it. But if you can't, then if you're a smart business person, you have to think about how can I change the rules? And it looks like, if we just use the one example of the kind of the hardcore, everybody worked from the office and everybody worked 12 hours a day, it looks like he hasn't been able to find enough people to do that. So there's even a story, there are all kinds of stories of what has happened over the last few weeks. And there's one where he was kind of begging people to come back. Those people who had left, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. He kind of backpedaled quite a bit on the work from home edict, the no more working from home edict. And then he needed something coded. I mean, I can't imagine the CEO of a tech company spending a lot of time thinking about code and about things that needed to be coded. But he sent out an appeal to anybody in the company who was still left, who actually writes code, because he needed something like that. And he encouraged them to fly to San Francisco and sit with him and have a meeting to talk about whatever it was that he needed. I think that says to me that he's reached kind of a crisis point where, no, the organization is not running smoothly. And a lot of it is because of some of the things that he put in place. And people exercised their right to vote with their feet, as they will do. And here's where I think we have to get out of thinking about Twitter and think about our own companies.
Yeah.
What if we end up, coming up with what we think is a sound business-based policy or procedure or set of rules? We put that in place, and the critical mass of our workforce rejects that, then that puts the rest of the business in danger.
Yeah.
And there are those who are saying, I don't know nearly as much about Twitter as a lot of people do. I mean, obviously I know what it is, but I don't know as much about the inner workings. But there are people, credible people, who are saying they seriously question the viability of the platform moving forward.
Yes, exactly. But let's look at it at the leadership style. I think that's what you were talking about. And I think that it proves to me, a lesson I take from this whole thing is that there are definitely different leadership styles. He has a very tech mind.
Yeah.
One of the things that I read another article that says, if you want people to flourish nowadays and stay and retain good talent, you got to provide opportunities for ideas to flourish. And I don't believe that's what's happening in an organization like that under that leadership style. He's the idea guy, period. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm talking out of turn because maybe I don't know. I've never worked for him, but some of the things that we're seeing in the chat box, I think, are so
interesting. Great stuff. I asked for chat, and we're getting it.
I know. Shelby said we had something very similar happen in our workplace, and instead of trying to fix things, leadership, and as they often do, just throw up their hands and say, "Don't understand why people are leaving," right?
But it can't possibly be our fault.
Yeah. And so, and Carol says, maybe Elon is just trying to find out who the obedient servant is, which is true, and that's what we want a lot of yes men, I guess, if you're that style.
Mm-hmm. Good
point.
Had
people to come back after they took the voluntary severance, yes, Frederick, and then fired them with. He also fired the security badge team because they represented the hierarchy, and then got locked out of the building.
Yeah,
which is so ironic, isn't it? But it also proves that previous point that it's run like a king. It's run like a fighter.
Yeah,
it's worked in the past with some companies,
right?
Just because you and I wouldn't work for them doesn't mean that it's not going to work. An excellent example is from National Lampoon. Something may look great on the paper for numbers, but they forgot about the employees. That's right.
Yeah.
If you've read anything about National Lampoon, you know that it was very similar. And Musk and some of his peers attract followers who disdain or reject the constructs of the new organization. These are the people that typically get called in to meet with HR to address workplace issues, who now feel emboldened.
Well, and Frederick, no, you just used the right, I think the perfect word, emboldened. People do feel, right or wrong, employees generally feel that they're calling the shots now, and I think that's why the title of this article is lessons that, things that Elon Musk has proven for us, because we've all talked about this. Everyone on this call today has talked about this kind of thing. And now Elon Musk is giving us the gift of a case study. We didn't have to pay anything for it. And we're seeing a perfect case study of the kinds of things that we're talking about. I think if we look 15 years down the road from now, this will still be a perfect case study of exactly what not to do if you want to capture the enthusiasm and the willing, enthusiastic, discretionary effort of your workforce. You have to regard them in a different way than this.
But what if 15 years from now, Richard, we look down the road, we look back and we say, wow, look what Twitter is today. Incredible. Yeah. Obviously, you had to do that to make it grow or make it a success. So again, we can only talk. Who knows what's going to happen looking at a crystal ball, right?
Right.
I think that it also comes down, in my mind, whether he's a success or not. How do we show that we genuinely care, about our employees? We've talked about this a lot. Every employee is different, and I think that we need to do little things specific to that person. And I know you agree with me, Richard, to get them engaged. And then there's this style, right? And people I guarantee you that he'll find the right people, right meaning right for him. So,
So you're saying that you think Twitter itself kind of has a survival instinct, and it will somehow survive.
I do believe 15 years from now we will look back and say,
okay,
and Twitter will exist. It may not look like what it looks like
right
now.
Yeah.
But one thing if I can say I trust, is that although we know that he tried to back out of the deal after he made it, But I think he's a very smart guy. I do. I think
I do too. I think he is intellectually intelligent. I think clearly he has a lot to develop in terms of emotional intelligence.
Right. But I'm sure he sees something that we don't see in Twitter.
Yeah, he probably does. And he has information that we don't.
Exactly.
That we don't have. Yeah.
Exactly.
So one of the things that I heard somebody say was, Elon Musk would probably think, well, people are not going to argue with this. I'm Elon Musk. Everybody wants to work for me. Everybody wants to work for Twitter. And I think there's a real danger that all of us are subject to of thinking, well, yeah, and maybe letting our egos get in the way that, who wouldn't want to have a shot at working at an organization like this? And I think he got a real rude awakening to say, well, Elon, not everybody does. Now, I mean, clearly there are some real loyalists who, in spite of everything, chose to stay there. But I don't know, what role do you think ego plays in this? And how can we as leaders learn about that and maybe be a little bit more humble?
Well, Carol's question leads right into that. How does Jeff Bezos fit into this? And is he the same personality as Jobs and Musk?
Yeah.
I don't know his story, and maybe you do, Richard, better than I.
Well, I think a lot of people would probably have a lot to say about Amazon. It has now become one of the largest employers in the world, simply because they provide a platform that has so much demand. But here's the thing. I think I don't know a lot about Jeff Bezos. Maybe others on the call do. I suspect that he personally does not lead his teams in the way that many of us would. But again, we're talking about the two wealthiest people in the world right now. And I think we have to put this in perspective. None of us, because they are the two wealthiest people in the world, none of us are among the two wealthiest people.
No, but I'm third. Did you know?
Okay, maybe so. Good. I'm glad. Yeah. But we're not Elon Musk. We're not Jeff Bezos. We're not Tesla, SpaceX, or Twitter, and we're not Amazon. So what about us what about us mere mortals who are running everyday average organizations just like you all? Maybe people are committed to, they want that badge of honor that they work for Twitter. But most of us don't have that. Well, and so how do the rest of us, what can we rely on? How are we going to get people to come and work and stay and be committed to working in our organizations?
I think you make a great point, and I just want to take it a little further. And that is that, we're running our own businesses, or we're working for small organizations. Some of our viewers are working for larger organizations, but we couldn't survive with that style of leadership in a small organization.
Right.
If we went out and bought an organization with 20,000 people, then we probably could, and that's the difference. I think that I don't know the roots of Amazon. I should read more. Mm-hmm. Did it start in a garage like Steve Jobs did?
No. Well, what I can add to that, because I live in Jacksonville, Florida, where we have not 1, 2, 3, or 4, about 5 distribution centers. And people work there, but they're not happy. It doesn't have a good reputation as being a great place to work. Certainly in the distribution centers. I don't know about the other parts of the business, but that's a huge part of it. It's considered kind of a sweatshop mentality, and they run through people, but that's okay. They got enough. They think they have enough people to come through. They get them for a little while. It's a fairly minimal skilled job, so there's not a great deal of time, investment, training for those folks. They bring them in. They work for a few weeks and then they go out the other side. That's fine. But does that work for every business? I don't think it works for very many businesses.
Anna brings up a great point.
Yeah. I see the point that Anna made, but I think it's related to something Frederick just said. I love the conversation that's going on.
No, exactly. Thank you. Might we need pirates now and again? Are there faults of price to be paid for such vision? And Anna, I want to throw back at you. We definitely have Canada, and we definitely have the US represented on this show all the time. It's rare we get somebody from the UK. So I'm curious, from your perspective across the pond, how do you see it? Frederick's saying, I think these leaders get a lot of airtime because they run these platforms and tools we use regularly. That's right. Yeah. These are things that in any given day we're ordering from Amazon or dealing with Apple. I say dealing with because I had to go to Apple Care this morning, to the Genius Bar. I felt so smart, or Twitter. So he's right. We are using these tools that they've developed every single day. Are these?
Yeah, and keep in mind that both of the organizations, when we talk about, well, Apple has some competition, but Amazon has very little competition. Twitter, very little competition in terms of exactly the value that they provide in certain niches and markets.
Right, right. So Anna says they do see that in the UK as well.
Yeah.
And I know that there's examples in Canada, all over the world. This is not something new. I think it's very public, which I think puts them at a disadvantage, but I don't think it's something new.
Yeah. Going back to something Frederick said, and I think Anna was responding to that, Frederick said, some people really want pirates on the seas of normal commerce. Should we convince them otherwise? That's what I love about this forum. It's not always so much answers, but it's questions that make us think. I think that's one of the takeaways from this. And then Anna says, yeah, maybe we do need pirates now and then to kind of shake things up.
Yeah.
Wow.
In your article, you mentioned, and I may have the wrong terminology, and I apologize, you can correct me, but that engagement is reciprocal. And I think that
exactly what I said.
I think that is a key as well in today's leadership that I may be missing in some of these organizations. And you bring up another good point is, do I want to work for these organizations because I can put it on my resume? Or is it truly a great place to work?
Yeah.
Can't answer that for any of them, but
well, no, you're right. People take jobs and do jobs all for various reasons.
Right.
When I said engagement is reciprocal, think about this. Elon Musk is asking for an extraordinary commitment from people, and again, we've said that's fine. What I've seen over the years that I've been studying this is that it's not unusual for organizations and for leaders to ask for an extraordinary commitment, but there is an expectation of an extraordinary return, and it's not just financial. So some of you know that I work with Bill Catlett. He and I have been in business for more than 25 years, and Bill is such an interesting character. We need to get him on the show sometime. But Bill was on the early days of FedEx and worked in the FedEx Leadership Institute back literally in the 1980s when FedEx was fairly much in its toddlerhood, I would say. And he talks about people who had purple blood running through their veins. This is from the purple and orange logo of FedEx. People who were so committed to what FedEx was doing. If you think about back to the late 70s and early 80s, to get something delivered overnight across the country was completely unheard of, and yet they were doing it. They were the Twitters, they were the SpaceXs, they were the Teslas of that time. And you did have people, as Bill has often said, with purple blood running through their veins. They would do anything for FedEx, but that's because FedEx, it was very much a Wild West cowboy pioneer, figure it out as we go along kind of culture at the beginning. They would do anything for those people to get them to do that. He often tells a story of at one point, FedEx was so low on cash that they asked their pilots to fill up the planes using their own gas credit cards, and they'd figure out a way to pay them back. And the pilot said, "You bet we'll do that for FedEx." Right. So I don't know that there are enough people who feel that way about Twitter to make this ploy work. Maybe there are. Time will tell.
The yes, but is people like Musk can throw a lot of money at them too.
Sure.
I know that money isn't everything. I actually read a study a while ago that said, imagine that you get double your salary, and at first, the first day, first week, you are ecstatic that same job and you're getting double your salary. And about 6 months into it, you sort of come to expect that paycheck.
Yeah.
Within a year to 2 years, and if you apply for another job, you're expecting to be paid that, right? Because you got it there, and it starts to develop your self-worth, that you believe you're worth that. So I think that that's their mentality sometimes. If I throw more money at my people, they'll be more engaged and they're more likely to stay. And I don't think that's true anymore.
I think you're right.
So
Let's look at some more input from the group. Anna says, we're also talking about the vital need to encourage leaders to be more humane, but there's a flip side. How do we develop their ability to be more visionary? Are these skills too diverse to be found in one person? Just thinking, does Richard Branson do both? Great questions.
Yeah.
What do you think? Anna, tell us more about this.
Rereading.
He certainly appears to be very successful, and I think he again has one of those kind of what's the word? Non-traditional, certainly not an ordinary leadership style, and yet he seems to have been very successful.
No, exactly, it's true. I think that it's an ability of a leader, not necessarily to be everything. Visionary leader. I think it's the ability to surround themselves with the right people.
Yeah.
And so if they can surround themselves with the right people who are visionary, if they're not, who are people.
Yeah.
I think that's a key. As Rhonda asked, has the workforce changed over the decades to become less or more tolerable of certain leadership or management styles? I don't think it's tolerable. I think, from my opinion, and I've said it, I know I've said it a couple times today, and that is that it's more public. And so now that it's more public, we have different standards that we're setting for leaders.
Yeah. Well, I do like to think that over the last few decades that we have developed some maybe different standards in terms of what is acceptable. Those of you who've been working for 30 or 40 years or more, and I know a couple of people who have been working that long. I can think back to leadership style back in the 1980s that would absolutely not fly today, not on a large scale. We see them in certain places, but not everywhere. So I think there has been change. I think there's been evolution. I think there's been progress in many fronts. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about, the bottom line benefits that we all clearly see between a positive culture and positive outcomes for the business. Yeah. So I think that's a long way of saying, I think there has been progress made, but maybe it's part of human nature, and it still kind of erupts from time to time.
Yeah, and Anna says he's well liked here, and he's dyslexic, I think. So,
yeah.
Well, his name is actually Richard Nosenarb.
Yeah.
No,
well, my sense is, from having family in the UK and from having actually flown on his aircraft a few times, I have a very positive sense of him, and yet he is non-traditional. He really kind of shake things up.
Hold on, I just want to. You've flown on his aircraft, or you've flown on his airline?
On his airline, but it's his aircraft of his airlines. Yes.
Okay. Yes. But I think there's a difference. So, I won't read all of Frederick's here, but I like what he says that sometimes organizations need a catastrophic event to clear the forest. And I was trying to allude to that. Thank you for putting it so succinctly. And that is that, somebody buys a company and they purposely, shake it up. And if that's a strategy, good for him. Let's see how it works, right? But again, starting a company from scratch is a lot different than what he's doing.
Yeah. I think also I want to make sure that I think probably Twitter is going to be fine. Yeah. I'm not worried about Twitter too much. Maybe they won't be. Maybe they won't be able to find enough people to actually get the things going. There's also a story that, where Musk said to everyone, fly in and help me get this thing coded, and we'll pay, just expense it, we'll pay you. But the problem was that there's nobody left working in accounting. And that's not just a joke, that's for real. So I think he does have to think about how can we keep the main infrastructure of the organization going. But I think as I said, I think they're going to be fine. We have to think about, let's take it away from Twitter and think about how can we learn from these things and what's going to work for us. One of the things that happened was that when he decided, okay, we would here's the deal that we're going to ask you to agree to, because it's a technology platform. He actually created something where people could just kind of check a box. Yes, I'm going to stay under your rules, or no, I'm not. And it struck me as you don't ask somebody to opt in or out of their source of livelihood on an online forum.
Right.
And think about the decision that goes into that. I think for Elon Musk, that's a decision he has not for a long time had to make and will never need to make for the rest of his life. And
Right.
yet there are thousands of real people who had to sit down with someone at home and say, okay, do I play under these rules? If so, I'm not going to see you very much for a while, or do I
Right.
go find something else? And fortunately for most employees, the balance of power right now is in the employee's favor. And so most of those people are going to be fine finding something else.
Yeah. It reminds me, there was a study done by Steelcase. Steelcase is the office
Yes.
people. And they found that when people have greater control over their own experiences at work, they were something like 70 to 75% more engaged. And I think that people are feeling out of control, at Twitter right now. And so, I'm curious to see, like you say, the case history down the road. And Frederick, you always put things so well. The Twitter story is unique because we gave the forest to the fire, and then we're surprised to find out it was burning. Right? Yeah. I'm scared to see what Twitter becomes. I think that it's such a public forum. Someone else mentioned it. I'm sorry. I think it was Jeremy, but the difference between Jobs and Musk is that Musk loves the attention. Jobs did not. He didn't want any attention.
Very true.
And that's a great point to make. And then he buys a platform where he's going to get more attention.
Even more attention. Yes. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And so that's why I brought up the issue of ego. And I think all of us have to be careful with that. That if our ego begins to tell us that anybody would work for us under any conditions, I think that can slap us in the face.
Rhonda, thank you for saying that. And how dare you have missed a few sessions? No, Frederick has not been a panel guest.
However,
we have opened it up to everyone, our regular viewers and listeners, to join us. Just send me an email. The email's right on my screen. Just send me an email and say you'd be interested. We've tried to get Frederick on, but I have a feeling, Richard, he's way too smart for us.
I think so too. He might show us all up. Yeah,
exactly.
Especially if we had Sanjay and Mike on here.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But Frederick, clearly the invitation is open.
Yeah. Carol always has great comments. My daughter and her friends have posted in info letting their Twitter friends know where they can be found on other platforms in case Twitter shuts down.
Well, again, the free market is such a wonderful thing because it really does. I don't know about you, Jeff. I don't really have a lot of use for Twitter. And I've just kind of decided not to be tweeting right now anyway. But I do know that there are whole swaths of the world who depend on it, not just for personal reasons, but the journalism profession uses it a lot. Government announcements, a lot of them are made on this platform. And if it were not for Twitter, I think there are people who would say, what would we do? My daughter is in advertising, and she says, we rely on it a lot. Now, as with anything, if something suddenly went away, we'd figure out a way around it. But even though, and I think a lot of people have jumped ship, I think their usership, we know, has dropped in the last month. But again, is it going to be enough to sink the ship? I don't know.
Right. So as we wrap up, we've got a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Let's go back to, one of the points that you were talking about in my mind, and I may have made this up, was having more choice or more control over your work life has become so much more important.
Yeah.
Maybe pandemic forced us to think that way. Mm-hmm. I alluded last show, Richard, that I've been working with this huge organization that I told you about with 8,000 employees. Yeah. Specifically in their HR area. And they actually have a committee, which I commend them. They have a committee that's existed just for the last year. And it really is basically on the employee experience. How do we change the employee experience? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that I know that I'm deviating a little bit from our main topic, but I think
you're already deviating, Jeff, yes.
I think it ties in well to what Musk isn't doing. And you are the expert. So let me ask you, what are you seeing out there? How are things changing with the employee experience?
I think people are demanding a better employee experience. And again, right now, they're in a position to do that. Mm-hmm. That's also not seen as something that's probably going to change much in the short term. Even, the winds of recession and so forth in the housing market and all that, the numbers are so stark right now in terms of the demand for labor in this country versus the supply, that for some time to come, for the foreseeable future, employees are still going to be in that driver's seat. And so I think they can say, and now it's not going to be for everybody, because people who live in small communities, people who are in very niched professions and so forth, they're going to have less choice. But in general, the population has a lot of options. They have a lot of choice. And I think they're saying, if we're not getting the experience that we want here, we're going to continue to go into Rome until we find one where it feels right, and then we're likely to stay.
It's accepting exactly what you said, and that is that understanding that no matter the size of your organization, whether you're 2 people or 2 million people, your employees don't work for you anymore. That I love that point. They work for themselves.
Isn't that really the truth?
Yeah.
People don't work for you.
That's right.
They work for themselves. They work for their families.
Yeah.
And if you can provide what they need, they're all in. But if not, right now they're in a position where they can make those decisions. And I don't think I don't think employees want to get cocky about it. I don't think employers need to get cocky about it. I think we just need to realize that we all rely on each other. So let's create that great culture where everybody can flourish. And because here's the thing, as we've said at the very beginning of the show, you can make whatever decision you want, but be prepared for those consequences. And if the decision you make is one that's going to, jettison people from your organization, it's going to be hard to serve your customers.
In wrapping up, Rob, thank you so much. Thank you for the real-time case study. I think there's a huge scope for students in UNI programs. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. Uni.
That's allow me to translate the British terms, university. University programs. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
To benefit from participating in this. Hey, we'd love to have university students join us every other Wednesday.
We agree, we'd love to. So if you have any thoughts, Rob, on how we might do that, please.
Yeah. Rob, you and I might talk offline. Rob and I have known each other I was thinking about the other day. Rob and I have known each other for 15 years. Wow, that's great. Yeah. Okay, well, listen, everyone, it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you so much, as always. So 14 days from now is going to be December the 13th. Is that right?
It is. That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
And so getting close to holidays. So
that's right.
Let me just announce, we did decide without you, Richard, last time that there will not be a show on December 27th.
Right.
Our next show will be our last show of the year. I know that's sad for most people, but we'll be back stronger than ever in the new year too. So join us December the 14th first.
December the 14th, but not on this 27th, and we'll resume again in 2023.
Exactly.
All right, Jeff. Well, hey, it's been great visiting with you for an hour or two, for 45 minutes, and all of the people on the show. And as we always say, see you every other Wednesday.
Every other Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Bye.